Hey, I want to invite you guys, if you've been listening to this podcast and enjoying this content and are passionate about protection, you should know that we have an entire library of all of the Protector Symposiums that we've ever done, hosted at protectornation.com. You can go there and you can download those and you can watch every Protector Symposium we've had to date there online, and you can learn protection tactics from some of the most elite trainers in the world from the comfort of your own home. I think you'll be surprised about how much content we actually have there. It's very, very, very reasonably priced, and you can upgrade your protection skills. Remember, protection is not all about the hard skills. 90% of it is all about the software, the programming, the way you see and move in the world to achieve a safer pattern of life. With that having been said, go to protectornation.com, join us there, and learn from the best of the best. Now, enjoy the show. Boom! What's up, you guys? Here we are again, another episode of the Protector Podcast. Super stoked for this one. We've got, in my opinion, a living legend, a guy that I've always wanted to train with, and I've come up with some good excuses to make it happen over the years. Craig Douglas, how you doing, sir?
Good, man. Good to be back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I would have had you at the last one, but I had to spread it out a little bit.
Sure. Absolutely. Understood.
Yeah, real quick, I guess maybe give the guys a little bit of an introduction to yourself and your background, because, they're always wondering, who am I listening to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Craig Douglas, I'm a retired sheriff's deputy from South Mississippi. I did a 21-year career. Most of that spent in narcotics and SWAT. I retired in 2011 to do training full-time. This is my 12th year of doing training full-time. It's my 21st year of doing training under the brand ShivWorks globally. I teach now in 48 states, 11 countries outside of the U.S., 4 branches of the U.S. military, 6 federal law enforcement agencies, and we hold a standing contract within a small section of the intelligence community organized under the Department of Defense. I'm best known in the industry for niche tactical problems, an entangled inside of a clincher ground fight, pistol presentations, and what that kind of gunfight looks like, knife work, fighting in cars, and solo interior movement problems, which is some of the stuff we're going to be covering. So any kind of niche black swan, probably worst day of your life that you didn't anticipate and train for, that's kind of where we dwell.
Heck yeah. Which is awesome, because that's what this event's all about this year.
Yeah.
And I think with everything we're seeing on the news and the media and all that stuff, I think it's right on time. I just wish I could have done it a little earlier.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they don't beat us. COVID 2.0 or pandemic 2.0 doesn't beat us.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen?
So we might all be driving in. Anyways.
Right.
Yeah, man. But nonetheless, it's an honor to have you back. So we've done 2 symposiums together. Probably one of my favorite SMEs to work with. Some of the things you guys may not see is just, Craig Douglas, and to me, he's a gentleman. He's a dangerous gentleman. He's from the sea. He's also ironically from the streets. When I hear his music selection, when we start training, it takes me back. But we're going to do some really awesome things this time. How did you kind of get into this realm, just so that people can kind of humanize you and understand a little bit about what brought you to being an instructor?
Sure. Well, so I've been an instructor, like all of my adult life. I started, I was a childhood martial artist, taught martial arts of various types in my teens. Getting out of the Army into the 3-year enlistment from 86 to 89, serving the Ranger Regiment, peacetime Army, got out, started my law enforcement career. And I formally started training law enforcement in 1992. So I was an academy instructor. I was collateral duty in addition to my enforcement duties with my agency, but I fought in an academy environment for 20 years, from 92 until a year after I retired in 2012. I became the primary defensive tactics instructor for our academy on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. We had 3 academies in the state at the time, and then somewhere around '99, I was certified as a subject matter expert by the state of Mississippi, and what that meant was I could write curriculum versus be required to teach certified programs like PPCT. So I wrote curriculum, started teaching some of my own content based on some of the experiences I'd had, particularly as an undercover narcotics agent, and then started ShivWorks just kind of at the request of the public. So there was no plan to do this. I was working on things at the police academy, and I started interacting online, and there was just an interest. People were like, hey, we'd like to see some products based on your ideas. Hey, we'd like to see some training based on your ideas. So I did that. And there was never any intention to be a full-time instructor. I really didn't know what I was going to do after enforcement. I wasn't thinking that far. But basically, it just grew very organically. This is pre-social media days, when we were all interacting on internet forums, the old VB bulletin software. And so I guess the term you would use now would be brand building. I had 9 years of brand building while I was still with the sheriff's department. And the last 2 years, the demand got so crazy that, I was essentially working 2 full-time jobs. So I made a conscious decision to retire. I had just enough time to get a 25-year, 50% pension with my military time and some unused leave. And I was just enjoying the teaching more, and it was bringing out the best in me. So I decided to go ahead and retire and do this full time. And so I've been doing this full time now for 12 years. Wow. And right now, I average about 40 weeks a year on the road teaching. The business is split evenly between open enrollment, regular people, and then closed enrollment with military, law enforcement, and other. So we're busy.
Heck yeah, 100%, as you should be. You said something during one of our symposiums that I thought was awesome. And it was something along the lines of, we were talking about some other art form or something, and you said, if it can't be tested, and I think Mike Pannone corroborated the heck out of this. We're sitting there watching a UFC fight, and I repeated it to him. But you were like, if it can't be tested, I want to say at speed with repeatable results, you should not trust your life to it.
Yeah, pretty much, and that's one of the big things that ShivWorks content is known for is we do what are called evolutions, and we describe an evolution as the validation exercise for the day's training. And evolutions are further described as non-consensual and competitive. So basically what we do after the training day is over is we put on gear and we allow people heavy contact, freedom of choice, freedom of action, opposing will, and intention. And we pressure test this content as hard as we safely can. So hopefully nobody walks away from a day's training going, I don't know if that works or not. And again, the evolutions are not real fights. What they are is honest experiences. And
honest experience.
Yeah, it's an honest experience.
I love it. It's the truth.
And we know as much as we possibly can about whether this content will work. So I'm a big advocate for doing that, and we require it in the coursework. So yeah, everybody. And the other thing too is it creates a really positive training culture because everybody is required in the coursework to show fairly publicly vulnerable. So when a collective group of people is willing to hang out there and expose themselves, warts and all, it keeps the training culture overwhelmingly positive and supportive. And that's important to me when, we're talking about, hey, we're training violence. So the environment that we do that should not be toxic. It should not be negative. It should be supportive, and it should allow people to fumble through and make mistakes and be seen, for who they are and what they are, and accept it.
Yeah.
So it works on a number of levels. I think pressure testing, besides just validating content, there are a number of overarching reasons to do that, because it just implicates a healthy, largely more positive than not training community.
Yeah. And an honest one, I think. An honest one, because all the good ideas and the things that look cool on Instagram, I mean, we're going to find out if it works. And I think one of the biggest compliments I got from one of my buddies, Luke Agajani, when he's like, because we've, the 2 times that we've had you out, it's like, we teach the course, they learn the fundamentals, and every time, like in all the fights, in all the chaos, the people that apply the fundamentals generally dominate, and they generally they accomplish the mission. And then that is really, that's really valuable, man. That's when people know they're walking away with stuff,
Right.
Like we saw with Zola and the, car fighting one of the dudes, she dominated, she implemented the principles, and she won like 2 car fights after that. It was amazing.
Yeah. And we have your guys too, outside of the symposium, come through coursework.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And they all show well, they really do.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool to watch them go through the coursework and see them apply things. And again, when they use the training, they do well.
Yeah.
Really.
No, thank you. It's always good to get that feedback. And I think huge takeaway for you guys listening too is you won't walk away from a course with ShivWorks and with Craig Douglas thinking that you know something. You're going to feel and you're going to understand that you know something. You're going to have mental reference points that are going to stick with you, and that I think is really valuable to walk away with. Yeah, we learned some cool moves, and then I went into Murder Alley against my buddy with the headgear on, and actually got to feel what it was really like to try to put this into perspective and in a safe environment, but against, what was it, non-permissive,
non-consensual and competitive.
Non-consensual and competitive environment. I love it, man.
Right. Both parties are trying to win. There are not role players. It is opposed.
Yes.
The coursework by design is a course of instruction and an experience. The course of instruction is a course of instruction, but the experience is that's what resonates, impacts, and makes the motor learning. That's what makes it stick and resonate. And our job is to create these little rooms in your head where you can sit by yourself and contemplate your experience. We facilitate the experience. You decide what to do with it. And most people overwhelmingly rise after the experience and make a decision, a conscious decision to get better. We have people that get fitter, lose weight. They're kind of, again, secondary and tertiary benefits.
Yeah.
Besides just the motor learning and the specifics of solving that niche problem, there are a lot of again, second and third order effects that come along with a positive, properly, because it may not necessarily be positive, a properly facilitated experience.
100%. And experiential information is superior. I can tell you something till you're blue in your face. If you lived something, that's real hard to uproot, right? No, I love it, man. And that's valuable. So for this symposium, we're going to be leaning into the one-man, single-man movement. Would you maybe just give them kind of a synopsis of what that actual course really is?
Sure. Well, first of all, we need to make a distinction on what we're actually doing. Okay. And I know just because it's language most people understand, and the language gives you a visual of what you're doing, right? So it's listed as one man CQB. It's not CQB. It's not.
Mhm.
This module is what I refer to as armed movement in structures. And it's larger coursework that's been condensed down into the time that we have available. And what it's designed to do is to teach an average person, whether they are operating under color of authority or not, to be able to contextually think through and navigate a movement with a gun through interior space. So, and there's several reasons that I make this distinction in the movement. First of all, when I teach this content, and I've taught this content quite a bit in closed coursework. I've done this for the IC, I've done this for JSOC. Invariably, especially in the intelligence community, you'll have people from a whole bunch of different mil backgrounds, right? From the Marine Corps, from the Army, from the Navy. And the most contentious arguments are always about CQB.
Always.
So the way I start the discussion, generally before we get into the instruction, is I let them know, hey guys, I know everybody here is a stellar commando from whatever branch of the service that you served in, and your CQB was probably the best at the time, and it served you well. That's not what we're doing.
Right.
And to show you that it's not what we're doing, we don't even use the language CQB to describe what it is. This is not close quarters battle. This is armed movement in structures. What is an armed movement in a structure? An armed movement in a structure may be the average person waking up in the middle of the night. They don't know why they've been woke up. They just wake up ill at ease. And boom, they hear a crash or a noise that's not just average house noise.
Yeah.
Right? It's something anomalous. They get more ill at ease, so much so that they choose to retrieve a pistol from the nightstand and move with that pistol through their home to figure out what's going on.
Right.
Now, that's an example of an armed movement in the structure. Here's another armed movement in the structure. Public space where we hear shots. We're with a family member. We're armed. We have no desire to engage that person. We want to navigate that space and get ourselves and our family out of that space. That would also be an armed movement in a structure. So that's why I make the distinction, right, between that and CQB. CQB is military language for something very specific. There's some very meta crossover between CQB and what I refer to as armed movement structures and what I'm teaching. But it's very, very, very broad, and the specifics of how we do this by ourselves for problems that are not necessarily aggressively taking real estate from an opposing adversary. Okay. Right. How we express these movement modalities and what we're actually trying to accomplish, and the execution of them is very, very different. Okay. And there's some words that commonly are used in CQB, for example, that don't even apply to what I call an arm movement instructor. Here's a word you hear in CQB a lot: flow.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Flow usually connotes or denotes how people move together. They're spacing from each other, or spacing off walls, their depth, things like that. But flow usually describes how people work with each other. Well, with what I'm teaching, there is no one to work with. So there is no flow.
Yeah.
So that's an example of something that's not really relevant to arm movement structures. And if you want to further describe flow and contrast flow, one of the things that people notice immediately is that the left and right limits of singleton movement compared to team movement are even more extreme. So when you're by yourself compared in a team-based environment, when it's time to move slow, you move way slower than you would in a team environment. And when it's time to move fast, you move way faster than you would in a team environment. So the quality of movement is far more extreme and staccato in creep, rush, creep, rush, creep. Where you initiate movement from and where you cease movement at, right? The level of precision, especially so you don't overpenetrate and open up more exposure, is way more than a team environment, because there aren't other people to hold angles. So you don't have the opportunity of coverage. A structure, one of the things in the PowerPoint so we'll do a PowerPoint, we'll do a very brief diagram, and then we'll start moving. So we go from what these principles are, what I have distilled interior movement, solo interior movement principles into. We will express them one-dimensionally in what we call diagram hell, which is a diagram that I draw on the board, and I have everybody come up and describe how they kind of move through that, applying the principles that they've just been exposed to in PowerPoint. And then we go from 1D to 3D, where we're actually moving around inside of 3D space. And then we start adding opposition and complexity. Mm-hmm. So that's the idea behind it. It's crawl, walk, run. And again, it's going to be considerably faster, because this is a seminar 4-hour format. What I'm doing is condensing essentially what is
48 hours, 72.
I'm condensing. Well, the coursework is 24 hours over 2 full days. So like day one's a 14-hour day when I do the full board coursework, because there's a low light portion. So I'm going to be condensing all of that into some digestible, essential elements of information. And we're not going to have time, obviously, to do the amount of repetition and drilling that we would do in a full day class, but people will get exposed to how to do this. It'll give them a sense of how to do this. And then we'll add some complexity. We'll look at some ambiguity. One of the things that I find interesting is, people will make statements that sound good, but really, when you start doing a deep dive, into it, are just factually untrue. Such as, well, if I catch somebody in my home, that's a go. They're getting shot. Blah 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 blah. Okay, well, what if you have a teenage daughter and she texted a young teenage boy?
Yeah.
he slips through the window and makes noise. And you confront this teenage boy. He's like, "Hey, sir, I didn't mean to come. I was just trying to see. Are you seriously looking at me and telling me you look at that 16-year-old kid and go, yeah, you're in the house, pink.
Yeah. Last mistake.
And pop him like a plate. All right, so now we have what we refer to as a don't shoot yet. We use that language because we might shoot him in 10 seconds, but we've chosen for a moment not to shoot him yet. All right. So now I've got interior space. I'm armed. I'm dealing with a person. I've chosen not to shoot yet. What do I do with them? Should I pin them in place and limit their movement? Or should I move them? Other things to factor in. Is there uncleared space between me and this person? And if I move them, do I move to them and risk exposure in uncleared space? Do I call them back to me? Do I move them out of my house? How do I get law enforcement to me or support to me without creating an incident where I'm the person mistaken as the aggressor and I'm shot because I have a gun in my hand, by responding police officers, which has happened a fair bit.
Yeah.
So we'll look at a little bit of that, and I will probably do more modeling of that because we simply don't have time to get a lot of repetition on it. We have a process where we teach people to control and clear, and we define control as a person not oriented on us and having their hands separated from their waistband, and then we make a decision on whether we should actually try and ascertain if this person is armed or not, and a particular way to do that, and a particular way to do that quickly. But yeah, so that's some of the ideas behind this, and to wrap all that up, what this is not is you running through rooms,
shooting at each other and just
doing CQB. It's not what you're aggressively taking real estate. Now, you may have to. There may be elements of that, right? There may very well be elements of that. Especially once things do go opposed, but we're going to look at a lot of these common problems. We're going to look at the idea of bypass. Here's the thing. If I hear something in my home, a better half and a special needs child.
Yeah.
And special needs child is over here, and me and my better half over here, and somewhere between me and them, there's an undefined problem. Okay, is it a burglar? Somebody's just trying to rip me off? Is it a home invasion? Where people are trying to take me, I'm the prize, versus just within the home. Maybe we don't want to engage with those people. Maybe if there's a expeditious, quiet way of navigating and bypassing that problem, getting my special needs child and just getting out of the house, and then calling law enforcement and people who and where there are more people with body armor to go take care of that problem. Maybe that's the better choice versus aggressively taking real estate like we would in CQB.
Right.
So again, that's another distinction between what I think of again as an armed movement structure, bypassing. And the idea of, is bypassing a good idea? How would you do it? What does that movement look like? What are the attributes that we need to pull that off? So that's the idea behind this. It is contextualized for average people or singletons, usually not operating under color of authority. Somebody, Oconus, who's doing something on behalf of the government in a way that is not overt.
Yeah. No, I love it. How did you, I mean, first of all, you guys got to be hearing this man's vocabulary, the lexicon, the way he's describing music, everything he's describing, it's gripping, but it's an awesome mastery of the human language of English. So, just kudos to you on that, man. It's very,
Thanks, man. Sure.
100%. And what I think it's an ultra relevant thing. I see, we see on the gram, we got guys, full kit, body armor, running around doing stuff all the time. Everyone wants to be like them. Totally dig it, respect it. But I think this is the most relevant equation for a CCW owner to face. And that's kind of why I really wanted to lean into this. And or a guy on, maybe you are working and in a rural area and you are law enforcement and your other buddy is 10, 15 minutes away and you gotta do something. What caused you to want to teach this course? Because I know a lot of your courses do come from your experiences and things like that, but what caused you to say, hey, I want to approach the single man operation of this equation?
I started teaching this content formally in 2006. But it represents kind of my career path of working as a sheriff's deputy in our county. We have real extremes in our county, from just absolutely super urbanized with casinos and gaming and stuff like that to super rural, mom and pop Mayberry type stuff, right? So I worked by myself quite a bit in scenarios where there just wasn't another person, and I had to make a movement and I had to do something, right? I had to figure that out by myself. So that was the first one, and the second one was my undercover experiences. Obviously, all the time I'm working by myself. There's hopefully somebody close, but sometimes there wasn't.
Right.
So, if I was buying crack in a crack house and, reception of the body wire is bad and things go bad. Let's say there's an argument. Let's say there are a lot of people in there and there's an argument between two dudes. Things go badly and I need to just bail on that buy.
Yeah.
And I make an excuse to go to the bathroom. And then kind of sneak out. What is that look? Do I even try?
Right.
What does that kind of movement look like? There are all kinds of movement skills, right? And that's what we're gonna do, is look at ways to move while armed through structures, and particular problems that are plausible and relevant to either average people or people working by themselves who are not average.
Yeah. What would you say to the guy who's like, so, I hear people say things like, well, you should walk your house. You should take a look at your known structures. Is there any kind of like prep work you think people should do in the environments that they are organically living inside of with regards to, giving them an edge on something like this?
Prep work, I think just what you said, Byron, walking your house, knowing where your exposures in particular are the worst. And I use the word exposure. Would probably the military, working version of what I call an exposure is dead space. So it's anything I can't see into, right? And the idea is we try and eliminate dead space as much as possible, things we can't see. If we can't see it, we can't control it. The problem is that a structure is a sphere, right?
Yeah.
It's not only a 360-degree environment, but in some structures, there may be space that ascends and there may be space that descends. So I think of it more as a sphere that you're kind of floating in the middle of. In CQB, we have people who take up areas of responsibility, sectors within a sphere, and that cuts down on areas of responsibility, right? It narrows our field of view. It allows us to concentrate better. Our attention isn't nearly as split. We don't have that now, right? So when we define dead space as an exposure, the object of the game is to minimize exposure and, moreover, minimize your field of threat. Narrow your field. Okay. So as a singleton, one of the things I'm trying to always do is do that, narrow my field of threat. There are only two ways you can do that. All right. There are only two ways to deal. First of all, what is an acceptable field of responsibility or field of threat? Anytime your field of threat exceeds about 45 degrees, it becomes unmanageable. Okay. So if you think about it, if a field of threat is 90 degrees, right, it's absolutely unmanageable. And this is the reason that in classic greenside infantry, ambushes are set up in an L.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Flanking works, right? Whether it's we're hid and we have a short arm of a linear ambush on a road, classic FM 21-76. I'm showing my age here. This dismounted patrol. Okay. But we do that because guys can't respond effectively to a 90-degree field threat when they get hit. And this is nothing new, right?
I mean, it's been School of Infantry.
Been doing this, that you see this in the animal kingdom. I mean, hyenas will engage from the front and then hit you from the side.
Oh yeah.
Everybody knows this works. Okay, so the object of the game is to minimize that. So what I tell people is anytime your exposures exceed 45 degrees, they are unmanageable. And as a singleton, you are always in a multiple exposure. In other words, if I'm moving down a hallway and the only place I'm exposed from, the only place I can't see is a lone door straight in front of me that's partially ajar. Okay. I can keep my eyes, I can keep my muzzle pinned to that door. There's nothing traversing to the left and right. Okay. Now let's say there is a door in front and then there's a door at 10 o'clock. Now my field of threat is probably about 45 degrees. Now, let's say there's a door at, I'm moving down a hallway. There's a door forward. There's a door at 10 o'clock. And there's a door immediately close to me on my flank at 9. Now my field of threat, my exposure is 90 degrees. That's unmanageable because if I'm looking to my left at 9 o'clock, there's no way I can see what's at 12 o'clock and I'm going to get shot in the ear hole.
Yeah.
So you're always, because there is no 2-man, there is no 3-man, there is no 4-man to hold these areas of responsibility. You as a singleton are always navigating and always in a multiple exposure.
Wow. Yeah.
So the object of the game is to not let that exceed 45 degrees. And there are only two ways to do that. One, change your relationship to the exposures so you narrow the field of threat. And if that's impossible to do, option B is to spend as little time as possible. So exposure thus becomes
Minimum.
a pace driver. It tells us when we need to move much faster or when we can move much slower, because the slower you move, the more precisely you move and the better that you see. When movement starts speeding up, you can't see as much, you can't input as much information about the environment, right?
Yeah.
So exposure becomes a pace driver.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
100%.
So when you evaluate exposure in your effort to narrow the field of threat, that is going to and that's what I mean when I say the quality of movement. Right now, if I'm looking forward and there's an open door, and I'm rolling, and there's a door that, as I'm moving forward, is gradually going from 10 to 950 to and eventually it's going to be in my flank. What's going to happen is when I look at the door here, when the door is at 11 o'clock from 12 to 11, that's manageable. That's a 45-degree area field of threat. What's going to happen is as I start coming in, I want to see more, right?
Right.
I want to input more room. I'm going to start to arc, and my shoulders are going to start to turn and get endefilade to the door that was ahead of me.
Yeah.
Right? So what I'm going to have to do is, as I arc, and this is exclusive of the decision to penetrate or enter the room or cross the threshold, whatever you want to do, or bypass that. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen is I start to turn my shoulders to limit that exposure. I'm going to have to speed up.
Mm-hmm.
I continue to creep and creep and creep and creep. I linger in an exposure that exceeds 45 degrees. And the more you linger, the more time you spend in it. If there is someone opposed, the greater the likelihood. Okay. So one of the things you'll see is when I go to apply or, evaluate the threshold of an entryway of a room, you'll see I will half arc quite a bit. But as I do that, I speed up considerably. So my movement may be super slow and my steps may be super short because I'm trying to see precisely and not expose myself around something. But as the exposure opens, I speed up dramatically and then make a decision. What do I do next? Do I continue and bypass? Do I penetrate the room? Why do I need to go in there? Maybe I do. Okay. And when I enter, I'm probably entering at a fairly high rate of speed. And then once I enter, the next thing I have to do is evaluate exposure again. And as soon as I penetrate, I need to see quickly, read the exposure correctly, and know where I should stop exactly, because I don't want to overpenetrate and create more problems.
Right. So
there's a lot going on. Okay.
Yeah. You're doing everything. You ain't got no team. You have no help.
No.
Yeah.
No. There's nobody when you enter a center-fed room, there is no one to take the opposing hard corner.
Right.
And that may dictate where you move from, where you move to,
right,
what you're looking at as you enter the room, and what you're pointing a weapon at if you have one in your hand. And all of those things, they might be different.
Yeah.
I might have a good reason based on a threshold evaluation with a long wall and a short wall. I might have a good reason to look in one particular direction, but keep my gun oriented in another.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about a lot of classic stuff that teaches you like a third eye principle, right? Where I look, the muzzle goes, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
There may be a really good benefit to splitting right?
Yeah.
Your eyes away from your muzzle. And we'll talk about that. Now, when I say stuff like that, especially guys who come from team-based, orthodox CQB backgrounds, you will see their heads explode.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
But when we really get into the discussion, and I say, all right, well, is there a greater likelihood that a problem's going to be on a long wall or a short wall? Here you have more space that you haven't seen around with more depth. Here you have less space that you're closer to, that has less area cleared. But if there's a problem, it's going to be an immediate close range problem versus a potential mid and longer range problem. Okay. So based on that, you want to look in one area and keep your gun oriented in another. Maybe because I can move my head faster than I can move my pistol. Maybe what I want to do is load my head to a particular direction, flip that off visually quick, keep my gun on the greater uncleared space, and quickly look back. There may be a good reason to do that. And if it sounds like I'm splitting hairs, I absolutely am, because the margin for error when you're by yourself is zero. There is none. So we have to split hairs when we're talking about. We don't have armor. We don't have a 2, a 3, and a 4 guy. We don't have nods. We're not coming on the heels of a distraction device. The room is not prepped with smoke or gas. It's you in your underwear with a Glock 42, and you're half asleep and you have to pee.
Right.
It's different.
Maybe you got a light if you're real quick.
Right. So anyway, that's the level of discourse and detail that we're going to get into. And the challenge for me, obviously, is making that digestible, in the time that we have available, which I can do.
Right.
We'll really dial this in and fine tune it. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. And I will do, again, a lot of talking and modeling, while people are learning how to do this. Teaching people to shorten their gait. Teaching people how to properly evaluate a threshold. So I'll give you an example. When people learn threshold evaluation, or how to pie a corner, okay, to use more common language, you will almost invariably see people step and lead with their feet into the pylon. If I'm sitting on the other side of the door, I will almost see somebody's toes, shin, knees, or hips first, because they step into the pylon and then they move. So what you have to do is you have to keep your vision and your muzzle in front of your feet, right? So the idea is, when I'm trying to work precisely and incrementally, what I do is I either, and there are a couple ways you can do it. You can lean or you can roll, okay? But the idea is that my eyes and muzzle break, and then my feet move into that space, and then I upright, and then I take another piece of pie. And what you'll see people do is they lead with their feet, they step in the pylon, they give a visual signature before they've seen what's on the other side, and somebody gets fire initiative.
Wow, man.
So simple stuff like that. Like, okay, do you know how to pie a corner? Well, yeah. And you'll see everybody just basically slow down. No, shorten your stride. Don't let your feet lead. Don't let your lower body lead your upper body. The proper way to pie or do threshold evaluation is to lead with the eyes, the muzzle. And we tell people that, but we allow them to step into the pylon, because generally, we don't work with opposition. We walk behind them, when we're coaching them or we're in catwalks. We're not on the other side. And this is one of the things that something like a SIRT pistol, that gives you a visual indicator. So a lot of times I will run, when I divide a structure up, a training structure up into routes, I'll have somebody navigate the route, and I'll move ahead of them, and I'll take like a SIRT pistol, and I'll lurk, and I'll flatten out against a wall. Okay, I'm going to bring up another technique real briefly that I teach that gives you a little edge. I'll flatten out a wall and I'll use that SIRT, and I'll invariably again see something first, and I'll put a dot,
Right.
like a green laser. It's like, get your elbow in, conform yourself to this plane, the edge of this wall that you're working. Okay. Don't let your shoulders lead. Big guys like you.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see a lot of guys who work in a squared sheeting platform have issues with telegraphing parts of their body. So there's some techniques that I teach that help kind of narrow your profile. Okay. And also, there's some other, and these same techniques also allow you to see a little extra sliver. And for example, I'll teach people to flatten out on a wall. In other words, versus if there's a line where, yes, I'll teach people to do that. I'll teach people to either put their back or their front against a wall. Because if you think about the width, especially if you're a bigger guy, the width of your shoulders, if that's what's dictating the limit of what you can see, a lot of times by just turning, I may get an extra 1.5 foot of dead space on that corner. And it may be enough to turn what was a corner fed room or what was a center fed room into a corner fed room if I can eliminate dead space from the exterior before I cross the threshold.
Wow.
So just a technique change in body position may allow you to cut off that area of responsibility, that dead space completely. And now, okay, well, I can put my full attention, narrow the field of threat on entry, and it's not nearly as much of a problem.
Yeah. That's good stuff. I mean, that's the stuff they're coming for, man. I mean, there's already a lot of value just as, just kicking this conversation around. I can't wait. Do you have any words for anyone who's maybe hesitant to come out and train? I think it's relevant for everyone, man, but any thoughts, we got single moms coming. We got folks that are professional protectors and stuff like that coming. Any final words to anyone on the fence maybe thinking about coming?
No, I would absolutely not hesitate to come. You've got a variety of world-class subject matter experts that are teaching a variety of relevant topic matter, for your safety and well-being. My personal experiences have been, it's an overwhelmingly positive, supportive environment. You're not going to get yelled at. You're not going to get harmed. You're going to train hard and you're going to have a good experience, and you're going to be around a bunch of like-minded people who have the same concerns that you do. So it is time and money absolutely well spent. You will be better for attending. So get off the fence.
100%. I love it, man. I cannot wait. As we roll into our closing questions, one habit that you recommend folks look at that'll make them a better person or a better protector?
A better person or a better protector?
Either or.
Think about trying to do something versus be somebody.
Do something.
Do something.
Do something.
Do something versus be somebody.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's a way of expressing selflessness.
Yeah.
Which I think if you practice selflessness versus selfishness, then that good intention, that goodwill is going to come back to you personally and professionally. So I think to be a better person, a better protector, you need to think about doing something, not being somebody.
I love it. Ultra relevant with the social media culture we have. I think I say that as like, it's just, I don't know, trying to be a man of value than rather being cool. I've never been all that cool. I've always just been like, well, I guess I'm 5'9", kind of chubby. I gotta make some contributions. Like people have to learn. So I gotta be good. If you ain't that hot, you gotta be smart. You know what I'm saying? If you ain't sexy, you better be smart. So
you're gonna be dumb, you're gonna be tough.
Yeah, there it is. I love it, man. Well, I can't wait to train with you. This is going to be amazing again. And it's very relevant. I mean, as people get prepared for hurricane, whatever, and wildfire, whatever, and maybe pandemic 2.0, I don't know, but yeah, it looks like it, So it's a really good time to get around a culture of protectors, like-minded individuals. We're going to be kicking off our social media stuff. We're going to have a platform for protectors to kind of get community. The event's going to continue.
Excellent.
And it's just an awesome time to sit and learn from you guys. So thanks so much for your time today.
Always.
Living legend, man. It's an honor, as always an honor. And I look forward to hanging with you here coming up in just about a month. Yes, sir.
Awesome, sir. Yeah, me too. We're really looking forward to reconnecting and getting back with your people.
Heck yeah. Oh, and what are you up to? Where can people find you these days online?
ShivWorks.com. We have upticked on our social media because we've hired somebody to actually do that. We have a guy. So we've done an uptick in social media, but ShivWorks.com. Train schedule is there. We have ShivWorks official on Instagram. We have my personal IG account, SouthNarc, and then we have the ShivWorks Facebook group or Facebook page actively where we post content. We post content like daily.
Outstanding. It's the way you got to be. Love it, man. All right. Looking forward to everything, sir. We'll see you in a bit.
All right, Byron. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Boom.
Boom. Quick shout out to our sponsor, Staccato. My first pistol sponsor. I've been sponsored by a lot of companies, right, over the years. But when it comes to pistol, that's my bread and butter. Pistol is something I believe in. I'm a competitive shooter. We're shooting anywhere from, 800 rounds a month type of thing, right? So Staccato, being what I believe, is one of, if not the most complete handguns you can put in your hand. It's got every component that a handgun could have, should have. They're actually extremely dependable now that they've made some changes, and these things are straight up tack drivers. If you're looking for a pistol that will do as much of the work for you as a piece of hardware can, obviously you have to have the marksmanship and all the different things, but different guns perform at different levels. And I want to say that Staccato is one of, by far, for sure, take it from a competitive shooter, we're shooting the highest volumes of rounds constantly right now. Not used to have a background guy, but like right now, when you go shoot, you're going to see certain brands. Staccato is one of, if not the highest performing firearm that is both CCW, duty ready, and also competitive ready. So I want to give them a shout out. If you guys are looking for a good handgun to build your skills on top of, go check out Staccato. Much love and respect. Boom. Yo, what up? I hope you guys really enjoyed that episode. Hey, listen, in order to get more out of the brand, I want to encourage you to go join us on our social media platforms and join us at protectornation.com. We post different types of content on our different platforms at different times. You'll get blog posts, you'll get videos, you'll get real world combat engagements and things like that. So stay plugged in order to get the most out of the brand. In order to support us, also go to protectornation.com and buy something, or join forces with me on Patreon. You'll scroll down the homepage and you'll see the link. Anything you can give counts. Think about whatever you would lose in your cushions or like spend on McDonald's this month, $5 a month, whatever it is. That helps us make the world a better place by making good people dangerous. Anyways, this is Byron Rodgers, protector by nature and by trade, and I'll see you on the next piece of content, whether it's a video or podcast. Out.